Good morning. I woke up this morning inspired to do a live video on the topic of how to stop emotional eating or how to stop eating on your feelings. So many of you know me as a journalist. Some of you know me as a dating and relationships coach and the author of How to Fall in Love. And this video is inspired by some of the conversations that I have had with some of the women I coach and come across in my dating and relationships work. Because what I find, what I hear is that how we feel about ourselves and our bodies has a huge impact on how we feel about ourselves when we go dating, on how we feel about ourselves when we enter into a relationship. And I believe that many women stop themselves from dating or jeopardize their chances of meeting somebody because of the way they feel about themselves and because of their weight and how they feel about their weight. And you might also know that if you follow my blog From 40 with Love or followed any of my work or read my book, that I am in recovery from an eating disorder, from compulsive overeating. You could call it binge eating, you could call it compulsive overeating, you could call it, there was some starvation, anorexia, there was some exercise bulimia, so trying to lose the calories that I'd eaten with compulsive exercise. I also used to binge drink, and all those things that I did to change the way I felt, to change my feelings, to try and feel better, to try and soothe the pain, to try and escape my feelings. So this video also applies to anything else that we use to change the way we feel. So it could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be sex, it could be compulsive work. I know all about that. It could be compulsive relationships, whatever it is we use to change how we feel. And what I really want to talk about today is self-soothing. So if you think, I'm just going to use the example of food because that's where most of my experience is. For me, when I was little, food was the most accessible thing to change how I felt, to soothe my pain, my emotional dis-ease. And why was I in pain? Well, it was many, many years ago, and my adult self can identify a couple of things that would have thrown me as a child, such as my parents divorcing, my dad moving out, my mum's own struggles with her emotions, uncertainty, a sense of insecurity, but also myself, my nature, my hypersensitive nature, and where that came from, nature, nurture, I don't know, but I found that food was really accessible. It was in the larder. We had a larder in those days. There was sugar. I could put it on my ready brek. I could feed myself and I could soothe myself. I could change my feelings by overeating or eating sweet stuff. And I learnt that very young. And then in some cases, we are also sort of given that message. So sometimes as children, we are given excess food or we're given sweet stuff to calm our emotions or to shut us up. And I'm not a parent, and so I absolutely don't judge any parents who do that, because I know it must be absolutely exhausting to manage children all day long, and sometimes we give them chocolate or sweets or whatever they want or are demanding. But sometimes so you might have had that message that if you've got pain, you will soothe it with food. The way to soothe it is with food. So wherever it came from, you might be struggling in adulthood with emotional eating. You might not even know it's emotional eating. You might be overweight. You might be wondering why you're overweight and why you can't lose the weight. That was definitely the case for me. So for decades, a couple of decades, I didn't understand why, despite the fact that I exercised like crazy and thought that I just ate salads at my main meal, or I didn't indulge when I was in company. There was some sort of there was a big denial going on, and I didn't realize I didn't want to see that I was binge eating. I was sort of, I don't know, I didn't realised that the reason I couldn't lose the weight is because I was binge eating. Other times I must have known I was binge eating because I instantly went on a massive run afterwards. And why was I binge eating? Well, because I had learnt very early on in my life that food could soothe my feelings and change my emotions, and it became a habit. In fact, it became an addiction. So the word addiction often sort of scares people, and we think, well, I'm not an addict, and maybe you're not an addict and you don't want to use that term. But for me, eating was something that I couldn't stop. Overeating had control of me rather than me having control of it. I started out thinking, I'm going to control this food thing. I'm going to undereat. I'm going to get thinner. I'm going to lose weight, and I'm going to manage my food. But something flipped in my teens, and I lost control, and the food started controlling me. I couldn't stop the spiral of starving, binge eating, running, starving, binge eating, running. I couldn't stop it. Now, your experience might not be this extreme. And, you know, I know there are lots of women and men out there who don't have that extreme experience, but you might want to lose weight and you might not understand why you can't. You might be eating when you don't want to be. And I absolutely hold my hands up that I still eat on my emotions. I do. I generally know that I'm doing it. So with my partner, I might say, can I have some cornflakes and yogurt, which is one of my little emotional food things, soothing, that I soothe myself with. And there'll be a sort of recognition between us that I'm eating on my emotions. So what are my feelings at the time? I could either discuss them, talk about them, process them, or I could eat. And because it's just a small cup of cornflakes with yogurt, sometimes I eat. And sometimes it soothes a little bit. So I suppose because I've been in recovery from binge eating and an eating disorder for sort of 13, 14 years, I have got to the stage where I can forgive myself when I eat on my emotions, when I recognise that I'm eating on my emotions, and I don't beat myself up anymore. And that was really the breakthrough for me. So one thing I wanted to talk about was, well, share my moment of breakthrough around binge eating. The breakthrough happened when I stopped beating myself up and trying to undo what I had done. So I would eat and then I would run around the park 50 times. And when I stopped doing that, when I overate and then sat with the feelings that came up, so shame, disgust with myself, general feeling of being fat, which of course my brain instantly told me within 10 minutes of overeating that I had suddenly ballooned. So when I could sit with those uncomfortable feelings, that's when the real breakthrough happened, when I could love myself through it. So I could be much kinder to myself. So I guess the first step is, if you are eating on your emotions, to forgive yourself for it, to love yourself through it. And after you have eaten, to spend some time, if possible, processing the feelings that you have in that moment. So it could be shame and disgust and sadness. maybe the act of eating has actually brought the feelings to the surface. So you feel the sadness that you are running away from, it surfaces after you've overeaten, and that's often the case for me. So I might still want to eat, but the feelings come up after I've eaten. Another breakthrough. So I joined a support group to help with overeating, and there are many support groups out there for overeating, anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, and so forth. If you'd like any information, drop me a message on Facebook or Catherine@catherinebaldwin.com. So one of the tools of that group was to call somebody in the group when you wanted to eat and to explain why and to get help. I found that almost impossible in the early days to do. But what I gradually managed to do was to call somebody afterwards. So I had overeaten and I had some feelings about it, and I began to have the ability to ring somebody afterwards and share how I felt. Eventually, I could get to the place where I could ring people beforehand and share how I was feeling that I wanted to eat. And many, many years on, I am often able to stop myself from eating emotionally because I'm able to process and feel the feelings. So I can stop and say, what is it that you need in this moment? Do you need food? And if you're going to eat food, how is that going to help? Or do you need a call from a friend? Do you need a hug? Do you need sleep? Do you need rest? Do you need less stress? Do you need something more interesting than the work that you're doing? Do you need to change your headspace? Do you need to change your space? Do you need to go out and get some fresh air? And what I want to talk about really is the process of soothing. So what I was always doing with the food was trying to soothe myself. Now, what happened in my childhood was something went wrong in teaching me, or me teaching myself, how to soothe. How to manage my emotions, and because I used food from a very early age, that became the norm. And what I have had to do in the last sort of 14 years, as I have understood my eating process, is I have had to find other ways to soothe myself. So if you've read my book, How to Fall in Love, there are lots of tools in there that I use to soothe myself. So let me just talk through some of them. Soothing ourselves in the moment. So I imagine it's going to be difficult when you have that urge to binge eat. It's not going to be easy to sit down and meditate. However, I believe if we have some form of meditation practice going on in our lives, ongoing, and there is lots of research out there for how meditation practices like mindfulness can change our brain chemistry, calm us down, go some way towards soothing us, creating more stability. And so I think if we have that running in our lives anyway, one, we would be less prone to overeating. To stress, we would manage stress easier. So if you have that happening every morning, you will be changing your brain chemistry and you will be responding to things in a calmer way. And we might be more able to do that when in moments of crisis, or we might be able to think more clearly. It might not be about meditating as soon as we want to binge eat. It might be about our meditation has calmed us down enough that we can create a space between stimulus and response. So this is a term that my therapist uses all the time, which I find incredibly useful. So stimulus is the moment of stress, the moment that you really want to, something has triggered you, it's the trigger. Your response is either overeating, or if you are able to create a space between those two, which you might be able to if you've been spending more time in meditation, mindfulness, calming yourself down, you can, in that space between stimulus and response, you can choose a different response. So in that moment, it might be simply to get out the house. So I remember in the early days of me trying to break my binge eating, one of my early responses was to get myself out of the house, get myself away from the food, walk around the block, calm myself down. It might be to make the phone call in that moment. If you don't have people to ring, then come and join my Facebook group, Being Real, Becoming Whole. That's a free group, and I would love to encourage people to be really honest and open in that group and talk about these things that we might find difficult to talk about elsewhere. So, find a way to break that instant response. So, meditation. Gentle exercise. So I'm a huge advocate of any form of exercise, and more recently I have got back into more vigorous exercise. So as I was recovering from my eating disorder, I really had to slow down my exercise because I had, I don't like putting labels on everything, but you could call it exercise bulimia. So I used exercise to get rid of the excess calories, to get rid of the food. So I really had to be careful when I was starting to recover from binge eating to sort of calm my exercise down, so I wasn't using on exercise. More recently, I have rediscovered the joy of exercise. So of jogging along the beach. I now live in Dorset by the sea. I'm so blessed. So I get to jog on the beach, swimming in the sea. It's not the exercise, it's not the punishing exercise that I used to do. It's gentler, it's more mindful, it's more self-aware, and it's also more appreciative of my surroundings. So my exercise routine in the morning, if I get to the beach, it's really my connection to myself, to the universe, to God, to something greater than myself, to nature. It's really about, really connecting to myself. I noticed that my face is quite bright, so I wonder if I move over here, if that will make a difference. Find, this is about building blocks. So I find if I build the blocks to create a more sane, calmer, less anxious and less stressed Catherine, then my desire to eat on my emotions will be less, and my ability to manage that urge to eat will be less. So exercise, it can get those endorphins going, all those really positive, happy chemicals, build up our serotonin levels and give us maybe the high or the hit that food or sugar might have given us. So I don't advocate using on exercise, but incorporating exercise into your day. And also maybe it just going for a brisk walk can change I know it can change your mindset. I know it can change how you feel. The other thing I wanted to talk about, so other tools that you might use. This is all about increasing your self-awareness and breaking denial. So journaling, even writing down what you eat, but mostly writing down your feelings regularly. So in the moment of when when it all goes haywire and you really want to eat on your feelings, you've built up a practice of journaling about your feelings, of connecting to your feelings, and you know what you want. So in that moment, when your body, your mind, your emotions are asking for soothing, ask yourself, what soothing are they looking for? Do they need, as I said earlier, do they need rest? Do they need a hug? Do they need touch? So if you're single and you haven't been in a relationship for a long time, I noticed this when I was single for a long time, we lose connection, we lose touch, physical touch. So during my single years, I would go for a massage and I would often start crying when the masseur or masseuse would touch my body because it had been a long time since I'd been touched. And I think touch is one of those basic human needs that help soothe. So maybe you've got a friend who could give you a hug. or could hold your hand, or you could get a foot massage or a head massage or a body massage. That's one way of soothing. Maybe in that moment when you need soothing, it might be rest. I am absolutely terrible at giving myself rest when I need it during the day. Like, I am great at carrying on working and doing more stuff on the computer and doing yet another video when actually my body is crying out for rest. So my desire to overeat often kicks in about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and often I will succumb to it. I will pick up some biscuits in my studio, because in that moment what my body and mind and emotions are really asking for are a break. They're asking for fresh air, exercise, rest, less stress, less anxiety, and I am giving them more work, more sitting at the computer, more stress. So I am rebelling. My inner child who wants to go out and play, she's being told to sit down at her computer and she is rebelling. So that inner child doesn't know any better, so she's going to eat biscuits because it's going to give her some soothing, when actually the soothing she needs is outside, it's play, it's connection, it's fun, whatever it is. So yeah, what else might help you soothe? There's sort of meditation to music or candles. Doing something that you love. I love riding my bike. I was out there this morning riding my bike. So find something to soothe you. But the bigger picture, sometimes, and this isn't going to happen overnight, it definitely didn't for me, sometimes we need to take a look at our lives as a whole and start to understand the circumstances that are prompting us to overeat. So, for example, I used to work in a really high-pressured, high-stress, highly visible job where mistakes were really jumped on. Well, they weren't really, it was just embarrassing if you made a mistake. I was working for Reuters, the global news agency. I was writing about politics and the Prime Minister and economics and the pound and, things that could move markets. And if I got it wrong, oh my goodness, I had to put a massive correction out there to the whole world. And it was really stressful. We had to be quick. We had to be first. We had to be right. And on top of that, I am a massive people pleaser. Codependent, look that up if you don't know exactly what that means. But I in my past I have got my self-esteem from outside sources, from what others think of me. So imagine being in that role and being so alert to what others think of me and how they judge me and all those things. So today I have greater self-esteem, so I might be able to cope better. But back then, the stress, the adrenaline, the anxiety, the long hours, the often flying, through time zones and not sleeping. So that was a ripe field for binge eating. So, I've written about this before, about travelling with the Prime Minister, eating my way through the minibar. I remember being in Madrid for the bombings many years ago, and binging, working till really late on my own in the office, going back to my little hotel and eating my way through the minibar. The circumstances in my life were definitely not conducive to a healthy relationship with myself and with my body. Maybe not just because of the job, but because of who I was combined with that job. So I have had to take a really good look at my life over the last decade and I have made a lot of changes. They've happened slowly and sort of organically, and but I suppose firstly it was a realization that that job I was in was no longer suited to who I was, that I couldn't maintain my mental and emotional serenity and my healthy eating in that job, in that profession. And I have had to change. I also wasn't fulfilled anymore. And I think when we're not fulfilled in our work and what we do, if you think of that word fulfilled, we are not full up. And what we do when we're not full up inside is we try to fill ourselves with food. So again, I think it's important to be somewhat, if possible, fulfilled in what we do, because then we'll be less prone to filling ourselves up with stuff like food, alcohol, and so forth. So it's been a long journey for me, creating a different lifestyle where I work for myself, which isn't always easy, causes anxiety, and sometimes could lead me to overeat around sort of stress around money and work and being visible in different ways like this. Yeah, completely different lifestyle where I manage my own time, where I can fit in sea swims in the morning and walks on the beach, and where I can when I can take a break when I need a break, and where I'm doing really fulfilling work. So increasingly I am doing loads more of my love coaching, dating and relationships work, writing about those topics, and promoting my book and running a retreat November the 17th to the 19th in Dorset. Look at howtofallinlove.co.uk if you'd like to join us. That's for single women. I'll be running another retreat in January around starting the year in the way that we mean to go on. So so I am excited and fulfilled with the work that I do most of the time. I notice in myself that when I'm doing work that I'm having to do for money and that I'm not particularly enjoying, my desire to overeat is much greater. I'm not feeling fulfilled, so I want to fill myself up. Lots of changes, and also as a result of lots of those changes, I changed myself to a degree in which I had a healthier relationship with myself, a loving relationship with myself. I was no longer self-harming with food and overwork and punishing myself. And as a result of becoming a nicer, warmer, more serene and more open person, I was able to love and accept the man that I had been dating on and off for many years. I was able to accept him as he was. I was able to appreciate that here I had a chance at a really fantastic relationship, and I chose that. And so as a result of all those changes, I fell in love. And so now I have things in my life that are really helpful when it comes to taming that urge to overeat or harm myself in other ways. So I have love, I have touch, I have laughter, morning and evening, I have relationship, I have partnership, I have help, I have support, I give, I support him. So combined with my relationship and my work, those two things, I'm much more filled up than I was. But, as I say, I can still eat on my emotions, because I believe that I have a condition where if you're in the addiction recovery community, you'll know this phrase about the hole in the soul. So, a deep sense that recurs. It's not always there, and it's there much less frequently than it ever was. But that sense that it can say a lot of things, that hole. It can say, I'm not good enough. My life is wrong. I'm doing this wrong. There's something wrong with me. Something not quite right. This sense of just imagine what a hole in the soul could feel like, the sense of emptiness. And that's why when I used to fill that with food, no amount of food was ever enough. The same with alcohol. No amount of alcohol was ever enough. The same with acclamation for my work. No amount of achievement or acclamation was ever enough. I had to keep filling. It was a bottomless pit. So imagine stuffing food into a bin with a hole in the bottom. You just keep filling. So that's why I believe we need to find a way to fill up. If you can relate to that sense of emptiness, sort of nothingness at times, lack of fulfillment. If you can relate to that, then I believe we need to fill ourselves up from the inside. So I do that with meditation, with prayer, with spirituality, with my beach walks and sea swims, with my purpose from my work, with my healthy relationship, with self-love, self-care, self-nurturing, healthy food. That's an important part, because I don't know if you feel the same, but I have this thing that as soon as my food gets messy, I want to press the F it button, and I just want to, I just want to, do away with all the good work I've done, and I just want to eat. So say I was out last night. I was at a little event, and there were nibbles, and I ate the nibbles, and then there were little dessert nibbles, and I ate those, and I felt like, hang on, is this my tea? Is this my dinner? Is this not my dinner? What am I doing? And I felt a little uncertain about what I was eating and whether that constituted a meal or not. I didn't feel full. I came home and I had a mini meal, but that felt a bit messy. And for somebody like me who's susceptible, who's in recovery from an eating disorder, susceptible to crazy head stuff, it was messy. And in those messy moments, that's when it can all go haywire. So I don't advocate strict diets. I don't advocate giving up anything in particular, although I tried many things at the beginning of my recovery. I advocate self-love all the time. So, and it's not going to be perfect. It absolutely isn't perfect for me, but I advocate sort of asking ourselves, is this a loving thing to do? Is this a loving thing to do? Is this in my best interests? And that's a question I use all the time in my love coaching work. Is this in your best interests? Is this a loving thing to do? So what am I suggesting? That you completely change your life, that you change your diet so it's really healthy, that you slow down, meditate, all those things. I'm not suggesting that you do all those things at once and you do them overnight. Change is gradual and slow. This is about a slow, growing awareness, perhaps, that the circumstances of your life, mixed with your personality, character, nature, with your habits and tendencies, might not be conducive to you managing your eating in a healthy way. And some changes might need to be made. But in the first instance, it's about recognizing what you are doing with that food when you are overeating. What are you trying to soothe? What feelings are there? Is there loneliness? And if you are single, I experienced loneliness when I was single, despite having many, many friends and lots to do. So is there loneliness, and is there anything you can do about that? And sometimes it's just about feeling it and grieving it. Is there a need for connection, companionship? Is there need for touch? Is there need for sleep? Is there need for holiday? Is there a need for calm? And if you can ask yourself those questions whenever you're tempted to overeat, drink too much, rather than just drink, which is absolutely fine. Smoke, sleep with somebody you don't want to, compulsively work, harm yourselves. Ask yourself, what do I need? What do I really need in this moment? And try to give yourself what you need. So I'm going to finish there. That was totally unscripted. I have no idea if you followed my train of thought. I will just finish by saying that my recovery, I'll call it my recovery from an eating disorder, but if that's something that you can't relate to, I will talk about the ability to stop binge eating, overeating, and developing a healthy relationship with my body and a body shape that I accepted. Sometimes it's about accepting how we are, but sometimes it's about recognizing that we aren't happy with how we are because we have been harming ourselves. It's very difficult to love our bodies if we're harming them at the same time, if we're hurting them at the same time, if we're feeding them stuff that they don't actually want or need. So for me, this process around my food, having a healthy relationship with my food and my body, has been integral to my ability to have a relationship with somebody else, a romantic relationship. It's been integral to my ability to fall in love, and also it's been a part of my journey to being able to do the work that I love and to believe in myself enough to do the love coaching, to be able to look at my face in this video and accept it for how it is. So if you are struggling with emotional eating, and I would encourage you to try and find ways to soothe yourself in healthier ways. If you'd like any help, any support, any coaching in any areas of life design or love, or your relationship with yourself, do send me an email, Catherine@catherinebaldwin.com, or drop me a message on Facebook. And yeah, just to say I have my How to Fall in Love retreat, November the 17th till the 19th in Dorset, howtofallinlove.co.uk if that's of interest. I also have my free Facebook group, Being Real, Becoming Whole, and I have a new membership community of single women who are looking for love. So that's called the Love Ladies Community, and it's a small fee every month. All the information for all those things is on howtofallinlove.co.uk. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been useful, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.